We're live?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Lloyd. Before this public meeting begins, I'd like to advise the public of the following. This is a meeting to host public meetings on matters requiring approval under the Planning Act. During the meeting, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers from committee and the public. Before we begin, members of the public are advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submission to the Corporation of the Municipality of Central Elgin before the decision, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Central Elgin to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal. Further, if a person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submission to the Corporation of the Municipality of Central Elgin before the decision, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Those wanting to be notified of Council's decision on any application should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralalgin.org, indicating which meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860 extension 286 and provide the same information. And with that, we'll call this meeting to order. This is a public hearing as required by the Planning Act to hear the applicant, Hartemink Farms, and every other person who desires to be heard in favor of or against the application for a minor variance from the zoning bylaw respecting 45010 Southdale line. Does any member of the committee have a disclosure of interest concerning this application? I'm seeing none. If the applicant or agent is listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you have called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. We will acknowledge your raised hand and you will be unmuted to explain the application. Mr. Perrin, do we have the applicant or their agent online? Mr. Hartemink or Mr. and Mrs. Hartemink, would either of you like to go ahead and explain your application?
Yes, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, can hear you fine. Go ahead, please.
All right, so we are proposing to build a small addition onto the livestock operation to enable us to finish all of the animals that are produced at this farm. Currently, some of the animals are having to be located at another farm about 20 kilometers away, and this farmer has signified a desire to discontinue that contract. So we are looking for additional spaces at our own home farm.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hartemink. That was everything, was it?
And then, yeah, there was just the, we were running into problems with the minimum distance being too close to the east neighbor and the west neighbor, and also the east property line. So those are the minor variances.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Secretary Treasurer, what method of notice and when was notice given to the public of the hearing?
Madam Chair, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 60 meters of the subject land on Friday, June the 18th, 2021. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff as well as the municipal website.
Thank you. Mr. McClure, do you have any comments or any questions with regards to the application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from municipal staff? Seeing none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, have you received any written submissions on the application?
Madam Chair, correspondence has been received from Catfish Creek Conservation Authority stating no concerns with the application.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments with regards to the application? Deputy Mayor Marks, go ahead.
Just a comment, I fully support this. It's minor in nature and there's a lot of logic in the request.
Thank you. Mr. Parent, do we have any members of the public online?
No other members of the public.
Thank you. Everybody has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. Is the committee ready to make a decision? Mrs. Wilson, if you could take the vote, please.
Councillor Cook, my understanding is absent this evening. Okay. Councillor Cravitz.
Yes.
Councillor Fair.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Marks.
Yes,
Councillor Rowe.
Yes.
Mayor Martin
Yes.
and Councillor Wynne.
Yes,
That's granted.
thank you.
It's carried.
Those wanting to be notified of the committee's decision on any application should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralelgin.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and provide their name and address. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860 extension 286 and provide the same information. This meeting is now adjourned.
Yes, we can leave.
Did anyone else get locked out and had to get back connected again?
No, I think you were fine, Councillor Fair. I don't think you left the meeting because I didn't have to let you back in.
No, all it said, it just went blank and then it said reconnecting.
You were still in the meeting.
Sometimes I do that as well, Bill.
I just drifted off into the clouds for a few seconds.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
I'm going to call this public meeting to order, please. It's a public meeting as required by subsection 22(1)(b) and 34(12) of the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed official plan and respective zoning bylaw amendments to the Village of Belmont bylaw number 91-21, Township of Yarmouth bylaw number 1998, and the Village of Port Stanley bylaw number 1507, related to secondary residential units now known as additional residential units. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting?
Madam Chair, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was placed on the municipal website on Friday, May 29th, 2021. Notice was also displayed in several weekly CBuzz advertisements, the Dorchester Signpost, and the St. Thomas Times Journal.
Thank you. Mr. McClure, I'm going to call on you to explain and present the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just share my screen. So as has been indicated, the following is a presentation to present the draft official plan and zoning bylaw amendments in the municipality of Central Elgin to implement the changes that have been made with respect to secondary dwelling units, now residential units. This has been something that the province has directed municipalities to do for quite some time, and is now a follow-up of a previous report and direction from council to incorporate the changes into the respective zoning bylaws, as well as provide for the updates in the official plan documents that reflect more recent changes since the original introduction back in 2015. So as can be seen on the screen is the, I guess, part of the draft official plan amendment for residential units. Part one, or item one, as shown on the screen, is introducing a new section called additional residential units. Right now in the municipality's official plan, as part of the 2013 update, there were secondary residential unit policies. This now is updating and proposing to update the section to align with new provincial direction on additional residential units. So part or subsection 2.3.6 introduces that new subsection for additional residential units, provides that additional residential units are separate and complete dwelling units that are created within a single detached, semi-detached, or row house, and or in a building or structure ancillary to detached house, semi-detached house, or row house. I guess the one point to note here is that originally when introduced, second units were only to be permitted, I guess one additional unit or a secondary unit was to be provided in either within a detached structure, so within a single detached, semi-detached, or row house, or a detached structure. Now, through the introduction of recent legislation in 2018, you're allowed to have a unit in both the main dwelling and a detached structure. So this brings us to the policy section, which further builds on that general direction in 2.3.6.1 and outlines the policies that apply to additional residential units in the municipality. So A is, again, it provides a maximum of 2 additional residential units shall be permitted per lot. So that includes a maximum of 1 additional residential unit in the main dwelling and a maximum of 1 additional residential unit in an accessory structure. Sub B of the policies provides that lands on which the additional dwelling units is to be created are zoned to be permitted residential use other than an ancillary use. So again, this is to recognize that where residential uses are the primary use, this is where secondary or additional residential units are to be permitted. Instances where you may be allow for an accessory use, where say if you have some sort of, I know in certain areas where you maybe have like an industrial operation where there may be provision for sleeping quarters for a groundskeeper, or that wouldn't apply in this instance. So just making it clearer. Sub C provides that additional residential units can be serviced by full municipal services. And then where full municipal services are not available, an additional dwelling unit may be permitted through a zoning bylaw amendment in compliance with and the servicing policies of the official plan. So this goes back to more, I guess, broader provincial direction that intensification, which this is looked at as a gentler form of intensification within settlement areas, that this type of intensification should occur on full municipal services. However, a provision was put in there to allow for some leniency, as I guess we'll see later on tonight with a specific zoning bylaw amendment that's going to be before council in a report, is that in instances where it makes sense or there can be a demonstration that you can provide for more intensification on other forms of servicing, such as private services, then you can go through zoning bylaw amendments to demonstrate that can occur. And that's where, again, allowing for this a stipulation in the policy would allow for an individual to go through a zoning bylaw amendment itself, as opposed to having to go through an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. So it provides a little bit more discretion there. Then sub E provides that development of additional residential unit will be subject to the following. So the additional dwelling unit shall not change the residential or general neighborhood character of an area. An additional residential unit in accessory structure is located in the rear yard or interior side yard. Again, recognizing that there's supposed to be a gentler form of intensification where you would be able to put these units in an area that it's not as noticeable. Additional residential units share the services with the primary dwelling unit. So this builds on the fact that it's really secondary to the principal use, and they should be able to be accommodated through the sharing of services. This is also desirable so that you don't get instances where you're creating a secondary dwelling or additional residential dwelling unit and then having somebody come back at a later date to sever off a parcel to try to create maybe a substandard lot or that. It just ensures that everything is all contained within using the same services. Then we get into meets the general provisions for additional residential units and the zoning requirements that apply to the property. So this is making that linkage to what we'll get into a little bit later on, where you have the general provisions that we provided in the 3 separate bylaws within the municipality, but then also recognition that there are some other general zoning requirements that may apply to property. So that's making sure that everything is covered through that. And then, of course, as well, that any dwelling unit will need to comply with the Ontario Building Code and the Fire Code. As part of this process, though, as well, there's a couple housekeeping items that we've put in there dealing with some linkages based on the old definitions in that were or that are currently in the Central Elgin official plan. So this goes back to residential intensification. This item number 2 makes a linkage and changes up the language that was currently in there, dealing with the fact that there wasn't that link between additional residential units being permitted subject to other policies in the plan. It referenced a different, or the secondary residential unit policies section. So this is just cleaning that up. And then item 3 is again more of a language piece where it's deleting that sub C and providing for now additional residential dwelling units are permitted in the residential designation, subject to meeting the policies in subsection 236. Again, it was referencing a different subsection before. Now it's just being updated for consistency. And then item 4, speaking to density, is essentially changing up language again, where it's deleting the phrase an accessory apartment in a single detached or semi-detached dwelling and replacing it with additional residential units. Again, trying to make sure that it's consistent with the provincial legislation and provincial direction on additional residential units in the municipality. We now move to the draft bylaw amendments, and instead of presenting the same thing over and over again for the Village of Belmont, Township of Yarmouth, and Village of Port Stanley bylaw, what you'll see on the slides are essentially the three different amendments that are going to be, or I guess proposed to be put forward. Item one of all three amendments is essentially just introducing a new subsection to the general regulations of each of the bylaws. So you can see that it'll continue on throughout the presentation of the Village of Belmont, essentially working geographically, being at the top of the slide, Yarmouth being in the middle, and then Port Stanley being at the bottom of the slide. So this is just the introduction of the specific subsections in each of the bylaws. And then this is the subsection itself. So again, you can see it's introducing general provisions for additional residential units, and the provisions of this section shall apply to all additional residential units unless specified by type directly herein. So this again will be the first subsection, or this first section in the Belmont. As you can see, the numbers changing to Yarmouth and to Port Stanley, again, all identical, essentially saying that the additional residential unit shall be permitted with any zone in association with the following uses: single attached dwelling, semi-detached dwelling, townhouse. Provides for that single attached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, or townhouse dwellings containing additional residential unit on the date of the passing of the bylaw may continue to be used for that purpose if the building permit has been issued under sections 8 or 10 of the Building Code Act, permitting the erection, alteration, occupancy, or use for the additional residential unit, and if the additional residential unit complies with the regulations and or Fire Protection and Prevention Act. I guess one of the things that'll be important to note when we're going through the are required to be, I guess, allowed for the establishment of an additional residential unit. Ultimately, what this is allowing for is that as long as you meet these standards in the general regulations, then you're only required to go forward with building permits. Otherwise, it may be permitted in other zones, but we would need to go through a site-specific amendment or potentially a variance or that, just to deal with that specific use. So what's being presented now is the minimum standards, so that we're not dealing with all of these types of uses on pretty much through every single application that somebody wants to go forward to establish them. The next subsection through the amendments just provides that no buildings or structure shall be erected or used for any purpose permitted by the previous subsection, so the additional residential unit section, unless a municipal water supply system and sanitary supply system are available to service the use. So this again provides back that there's that linkage that we want to see these uses occur on full municipal services, unless it can be demonstrated that it can be properly serviced through other means. And as such, we would need to then go through a site-specific amendment to deal with it. The next subsection then introduces that a maximum of 2 additional residential units shall be permitted per lot, including a maximum of 1 additional residential unit in the main dwelling and a maximum of 1 additional residential unit in an accessory structure. So again, echoing the sections of the official plan policy. And then the next are 4 subsections, as you'll see, again, making the linkages to the 3 different bylaws. Sub A, providing that an additional residential unit shall not be permitted on a separate lot from the primary dwelling unit that it's accessory to. Again, it's an additional residential unit on a property, so we don't want to see future severances for additional residential units. B, being that an additional residential unit or part thereof should not be permitted in a basement where the finished floor level of such basement is below the level of any sanitary sewage servicing the building or structure in which the basement is located. Again, not wanting to ensure that there isn't sewage backup into an additional residential unit in a basement. C, providing that an additional residential unit shall not be permitted within or upon hazardous lands that are subject to flooding, erosion, and or dynamic beach hazards as regulated by the Associated Conservation Authority having jurisdiction for that area. This, again, is trying to make sure the human health and safety aspect. And then D, providing that despite the previous sub-bullet there, an additional residential unit may be permitted within the flood fringe portion of the flooding hazard where a two-zone concept for floodplains is applied and subject to appropriate floodproofing standards. This only really applies to Port Stanley, where that's the only area within the municipality that has a two-zone concept. But for consistency's sake, in this being something that we would assume would be rolled into a consolidated bylaw moving in the future, we've just kept it all consistent. The next three bullets, again, this being in the Belmont bylaw, then going on to the Yarmouth bylaw and the Port Stanley bylaw, provide accessory structure on the same lot as the primary dwelling. Again, so this comes back to the fact that the legislation allows for additional residential units in a detached structure. But then B, providing that an additional residential unit and accessory structure shall be required to meet the regulations of the zone which apply to accessory structures with the exception of the following. So there's a minimum rear yard setback of 1.2 meters provided, a minimum side yard setback of 1.2 meters provided, and then a maximum height of 4 meters. The three separate bylaws do have different setback requirements for accessory structures. These setback requirements were proposed given the fact that for building code, once you get under the 1.2 meters for a rear yard or side yard, there's different fire separation concerns and also building code standards. So this ensures that it would be as within that 1.2 meters. So you don't have to worry about those setbacks. And then the maximum height being 4 meters, just to ensure that you're not creating larger buildings or structures close to property lines without the proper oversight. Again, this would be something that may be permitted given in certain circumstances, as long as we're looking at it on a site-by-site basis and it makes sense. So we would look at that just as a case-by-case basis. And then additional residential unit within an accessory structure may only be permitted in the rear yard or interior side yard. So this is, again, trying to ensure that they are kind of within cluster of development as opposed to having them on exterior side yards of where roads are and that, just again to try to minimize land use compatibility issues and the like. So then again, we move to another subsection, again, with this one being the Belmont bylaw, the Yarmouth bylaw, and the Port Stanley bylaw. And this subsection provides that additional residential units shall not be greater than 40% of the combined total floor area of the primary dwelling unit and the additional residential units. For the purposes of calculating gross floor area requirements for additional residential units, the following shall not be included. So additions to dwelling units completed after the date of passage of this bylaw, and the floor area of accessory structures where an accessory structure does not include an additional residential unit. So providing a little bit of flexibility to the area requirements. Again, these are the next subsections in the three bylaws, being that exterior alterations to provide for entrances to the residential or additional residential unit within interior or rear yards of the primary dwelling unit may be permitted. So you're allowed to have additions to existing dwellings to allow for that, for those units. Again, with the next subsection in the three bylaws being that the minimum of 1 parking space is required for each additional residential unit, notwithstanding the provisions of, this is the respective parking sections in the three bylaws. A parking space for an additional residential unit may be located in tandem with parking spaces provided for the main residential use. So normally you're not allowed to have tandem parking in the bylaws. This provides that exception in the from the general provisions, given that there is provincial direction and regulations that allow for that to occur. And then the next subsections are, again, going back to the additional residential units shall be required to conform to all Ontario Building Code and Ontario Fire Code regulations. And that takes us to the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Have you received any written submissions on the proposal?
Madam Mayor, no correspondence has been received.
Thank you. We will now open the meeting to questions from the public. For those attending who wish to bring forward their concerns or comments to the municipality. If you're listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you've called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in a sequential order. When given the opportunity to speak, please provide your name and address for the record. I'm going to ask Mr. Perrin now to let us know if there's anyone who wishes to speak or ask questions.
Madam Chair, there is no one in the waiting room.
Thank you. Do any members of council have any questions? Councillor Fair.
Yes, I'm just wondering, as far as the height, it says 4 meters, so that's 12 feet about. That's a pretty low building, or did you mean 4 feet to the top of the wall and then plus a peaked roof, or do you mean 4 feet right to the top of the peaked roof?
If I may,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Councillor Fair. It all depends on the, I guess, the type of roof that is being proposed. So within the bylaws, for a peaked roof, it would be the midpoint between the ridge and the eaves. So if a peaked roof was being proposed, the 4 meters would be to that midpoint measurement.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay, seeing none. And Mr. Perrin, I assume there's still no one in the waiting room?
No one in the waiting room, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralalgon.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. Thank you.